Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we're going to be looking at the massive announcements made for season 2. We're going to be looking at the healer changes, healer reworks. We're going to be looking at some of the tier sets. Keep in mind, there is a lot of information here. I'm going to be looking at, again, the things that interest me. I might not look at all the tier sets. I might miss on things. So please leave a comment below if I missed out on something, if I missed out on certain synergies that have been changed, because again, a lot of information. Let's go and get started. I'm gonna start off with Druid. There's been quite a few changes in terms of the class tree, which I think are really warranted, because I think the class tree for Druid has been pretty shambolic for a long time, even though they did a couple of reworks. So many talents have changed position. New talent, Grievous Wounds, Rake, Rip, and Trash damage is increased by 10%. New talent, Gale Winds, increases Typhoon radius by 20 and its range by 5. There's a new talent in terms of Tempest, reduces the cooldown of Typhoon. Okay, a lot of these are utility based. This is where it kind of gets interesting, because it kind of ties into the damage of Resto Druid and the fact that Blizzard wants to simplify it in some way. So physical damage dealt by your ability is increased by 5% or 25% for Resto Druids, and the same way but for magic damage. And this is very important because Blizzard wants you to choose whether you want to focus on magic DPS or physical DPS, because they want to reduce the complexity when it comes to weaving different types of damage. You can see this at the very bottom when you go to Resto Druid changes. You can see in terms of all damage is reduced by 20%. New talents in terms of Lycaris Meditation. You retain Lycaris teaching bonus from your most recent form for 5 seconds after shifting out of it. And another talent, this is probably something a bit more interesting in my opinion. Symbiotic Relationship forms a bond with an ally. Your self-healing also heals your bonded ally for 10% of the amount healed. Your healing to your bonded ally also heals you for 8% of the amount healed. And I think this is a bit more interesting, and we'll talk about the new talent trees as well. They have been updated, at least on Wowhead. In terms of other talents, we have the renewal here. When a hit deals more than 12% of your maximum health, instant heal for 10% of your health. This effect can occur more than once every 30 seconds. Okay, this is a lot of other specs also have something similar to this. We're also looking at perfectly honed instincts. Well-honed instincts can trigger up to once every 90 seconds. Ursoc Spirit has been updated. Also, the position of this has been changed as well, so it's a little bit early in the tree. Stamina increased by 4%, stamina in bear form is increased by additional 5%, and the developers notice these bonuses multiplied together, so Druid's health in bear form remains unchanged. In terms of other talents, Life of the Sun, this is more for balanced Druids. Improved Rejuvenation has been changed to Lingering Healing. Rejuvenation duration is increased by 3 seconds. Regrowth duration is increased by 3 seconds by casting yourself. Okay. Instinct of the Claw is now 1 point talent and has been updated. Ferocious Bite and Maul damage is increased. Lore of the Grove is now 1 point talent. It has been updated for Moonfire and Sunfire damage is increased by 10%. You can also see Fluid Form has been updated. Skull Bash can now be used in any form and shifts you into cat form if necessary. Now, Fluid Form has been moved to the left side. It's still at the very bottom of the tree. I don't understand why Fluid Form can't be baseline. I think quality of life improvements like that should just be there by default. And you also look at the fact that Rejuvenation healing increased by 5% and Wild Growth healing is increased by 5%. That's probably to do with the fact that Lore of the Grove has been changed. So if you go to Lore of the Grove, it only increases Moonfire and Sunfire damage by 10%. It no longer adds additional healing to your Reju of a Wild Growth. So I think Blizzard is just adding these by default, so you don't feel like you have to pick certain talents like Lore of the Grove, which again, a decent change. Then you will see some damage tuning right here in terms of rip damage reduced by 9%, shred damage increased by 10%, swipe damage increased by 10%, ferocious bite damage reduced by 8%. And then you'll see something like in terms of rising light, falling night has been removed. And honestly, any talent that just gives you passive damage or healing or whatever, I feel like all of those are extremely boring. I just hope they're going to be baked into or Blizzard is going to account for the loss of some of these. We have to talk about the damage, but we have to also go to the actual Resto Druid changes themselves, because this is where it gets very interesting in my opinion. So first of all, Mastery has been changed, and it's been a long time since any of the healers' mastery has been changed in a significant way. So effectiveness increased by 30%. Now reduces his bonus with each additional heal over time effect, which basically means that a lot of people are having trouble while playing Resto Druid because there might be unexpected damage happening. They don't have HOTS on the person, and therefore they feel like they're in this kind of catching up or falling behind mode. And this is, in my opinion, aiming at alleviating that issue. You don't have to have 20 different HOTS on the person in order for your heals to feel like powerful, aka your regrow to do the heavy lifting. It feels like Blizzard is giving you a lifeline in terms of, hey, you might not have a lot of HOTS available right now, but you don't need to have all those HOTS available for your healing to still feel effective. Because right now when I'm playing my Resto Druid, it can sometimes feel like I need 10 GCDs in order to achieve something similar that other healers can do in 5. And I'm hoping that this mastery change is going to help with that, and I think Resto Druid could really use some help in this specific department. And I think this is very, very interesting. Let me know how you feel about that. Tranquility channel time reduced to base 5 seconds, used to be 8 seconds. This is actually being changed for a lot of other healers in terms of their cooldowns as well, so this is something that Blizzard is kind of experimenting with. Nature Swiftness now increases the healing of regrowth by 200% instead of 100%, so this is going to be a big nuke if someone is in real danger. Flourish now causes an initial heal effect on applied allies split evenly among them. Again, something also the Blizzard is experimenting with cooldowns that don't have an oomph straight away. They want, when you press those cooldowns, to feel an initial burst of something, and then you get to the effect of the actual cooldown. And this has been used, again, this has been applied to a lot of other healers as well in similar way. And again, in the last change is all damage is reduced by 20%, but you have to remember there's talents that also increase your damage. So the developers note is this damage reduction keeps Restoration Druid's physical or magic damage dealt equivalent to the previous patches when selecting the Circle of Wilds or Circle of Heaven's talents. We're making this change with the goal of moving Resto Druids towards utilizing either the damaging physical abilities or magic spells instead of weaving between them both in order to reduce the damage rotation complexity. I'm fine with this as long as the reward is equivalent for the effort that is required. Let's all be honest. Kitty weaving is far more difficult than just casting Wrath or Moonfire, Sunfire once in a while type of thing. If Blizzard is going to, how do I say, tune this in such a way that if someone chooses to cat weave, the difficulty is there, and I think they should be rewarded for that. As long as the balance is fine, because right now I can see that, for example, if you pick the physical talent and you're like, okay, my Sunfire is dealing a lot less damage, and that feels pretty bad because Sunfire is such an easy way of providing DPS. But don't get me wrong, I want both of the playstyles to be viable. I don't want to gatekeep Resto Druid DPS. I would love to know your opinion. Are you an enjoyer of cat weaving? Do you resonate towards that physical damage, or are you going to try out that magic DPS option? And the tree, you can see right here, this is the first kind of initial impression of the tree. You can see in terms of the class tree, Skullbash is here. You also can see that Ironfur is kind of been changed, that you might not have to path through Ironfur anymore, which only took 75 years, which is great. You also see Fluid Form has been moved to this side. You can see the new talents here in terms of the Circle of the Wild and the Circle of Heavens being right here, right below Likara's teachings. And in terms of the tier set for Resto Druid right now, keep in mind, throughout this video, I'm not going to be talking about the 2-set bonus, because the 2-set bonus is the same for every single healer. Blizzard is introducing role-based tier sets for the 2 sets. So this is all going to be the same. Your healing spells have a chance to apply insurance. This is all the same for all the healers. The 4-set bonus, Life Bloom's Bloom, has a 30% chance to apply insurance to its target for 10 seconds. When insurance is consumed or removed, it leaves a missing rejuvenation, regrowth, or wild growth heal overtime effect for 15 seconds on its target. This part here, actually, I mean, it's just gonna fill in the HOTS that you're missing, which in turn is also going to work with your mastery, which is going to help it. Again, we have to talk about the master rework, where it kind of did, and also the fact that this kind of Life Bloom's Bloom, this is more aimed, you can straight away know if you're a Resto Druid who's been playing, this is more aimed towards Mythic Plus, because you're already playing a build that is around Life Bloom or Life Bloom Bloom effects. You're already playing double Life Bloom, you're already playing photosynthesis. So I feel like this tier set is like, oh hey, I'm a Resto Druid who's doing Mythic Plus content. I'm liking a lot of changes right now that they've announced in terms of the master rework. The damage changes are still kind of up in the air for me based on tuning, but the 4-set bonus or the tier set bonus really fits Mythic Plus. So guys, let me know how you feel about this. Let me know how you feel about this if you're a Resto Druid who's raiding, and how do you feel about this tier set. Now let's go to Preservation of Evoker, and they did receive some changes, mainly about hero builds that people are not really using in specific forms of content. So first of all, Evoker Rescue now clears movement bearing effects from you and your target. I'm pretty sure every single Evoker wish that this change would be applicable right now for the last boss in Nerebar Palace, because this would be very nice. Outside of that, you can see here the developer's note for Flameshaper. I think this is very interesting. We're looking to improve some of the weaker talents for Flameshaper and enable them to be more effective in dungeon content. Absolutely this is 100% correct. No one really plays Flame Shaper in Mythic Plus content as a Preservation Evoker. Flame Shaper just feels like it's made more for raiding, and then you just play Chrono Ward in Mythic Plus. And I think the fact that Blizzard is trying to make both hero talents more applicable or more viable is the way to go. Now we'll have to see if this is going to be the right way to do it. Instead of increasing duration and spreading Fire Breath and Dream Breath, Flame Shaper can now cast Fire Breath and Dream Breath more often. I think on paper this is pretty nice, because in Mythic Plus you kind of, at least me specifically, when it comes to every single healer out there, I would rather have my abilities more often than having my abilities on a longer cooldown but be stronger. I feel more consistent throughput is better, and have them deal more damage healing in compressed window of time. In addition, we're adding a way to opt out of Enkindle so that Echo builds can function better with Flame Shaper. So now let's look at some of the new talents in terms of Fulminous Roar. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but Fire Breath and Dream Breath deal their damage and healing in 20% less time. Now, there's a couple of other talents that healers have that are somewhat similar to this. The wording of this is extremely important. I'm looking forward to PTO in terms of testing out some of the things. Let's look at Traveling Flame has been redesigned. No longer increases Dream Breath or Fire Breath duration and spreads. Instead, reduces the cooldown of Fire Breath or Dream Breath for 5 seconds when you cast Engulf, and then Engulf's cooldown is now reduced by haste, so these go hand in hand, because the more Engulfs you use, the more Fire Breaths and Dream Breaths you can have. And again, this is all kind of goes into the fact that you will have or should have more uses of these spells in terms of continuous throughput. And that is kind of, again, that's the whole rationale of Blizzard's changes here. In terms of Titanic Precision, no longer, okay, this is kind of irrelevant in here. Conduit of Flame, critical strike chance increased to 15%, used to be 10%. Enkindle deals 25% of Essence ability damage, used to be 20%. And Expanded Lungs is now a choice talent against Enkindle. So you don't have to or forced into picking Enkindle. You could pick something like Expanded Lungs. Expanded Lungs increases the power of your Fire Breath and Dream Breath. Again, Blizzard is trying to give you more choices, but we all know it's probably going to come down to theory crafting and things like that. And Fan the Flames has been removed. Fan the Flames gave extra synergy to Enkindle. So there has been some changes to Flame Shaper in terms of the ordering, in terms of the choice nodes. Let me know if you are a Preservation Evoker who's never touched Flame Shaper. Are you more leaning towards trying this out? And we'll have to see how this is going to turn out, specifically in raid content as well. We also have to talk about the loss of the tier set, but let's look at some other changes in terms of Preservation Evoker. You can see in here, there's not a whole lot. Again, some people might be upset about this. Some people might be like, hey, Preservation Evoker is in a great spot anyways. It doesn't really need a whole lot of changes. So Dream Breath now heals yourself and 5 injured allies. This is actually pretty nice, especially in that raid content, and a lot of the developers note here is this guarantees a Dream Breath heal overtime effect will always be on yourself, so you never have to purposely miss allies with their breath count. This is referencing the days of Race to World First when Flame Shaper was absolutely insane, and you would play around the engulfs and you would play around pressing engulfs on yourself, and you would need to make sure you have Dream Breath on yourself in order to engulf yourself. But that wasn't always guaranteed, and people would literally aim Dream Breath away from the raid just in order to get Dream Breath buff on themselves, which is absolutely degeneracy to the max. So I like this change, and also, again, this is going to be more felt in raid content because you have more than 5 people. And the last change here is Dream Breath and Reversion no longer snapshots with Mastery, Lifebinder. And again, if you look at the overall changes here, there's not a whole lot in terms of preservation only changes. I like the fact that Flame Shaper is being addressed in terms of Mythic Plus content. I'm actually not sure how that's going to turn out in terms of Mythic Plus and raiding and how it's going to feel, because we also have to talk about the fact that your old tier set is going away and you're getting a new tier set in Season 2. Again, the 2 set bonus is the same for every single healer, and the 4 set bonus is Verdant Embrace always grants insurance to you and your target for 6 seconds. And its cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds. Now, first of all, I'm not sure if this is going to work with echoes. Maybe you're going to have echoes and you're going to Verdant Embrace, and then again, I'm not sure if this is going to apply insurance to those targets. That sounds a little bit too OP. And the second thing about this, how many times do you press Verdant Embrace on any target other than yourself? Most of the time, Preservation Evokers are going to be applying echoes, they're going to be pressing Verdant Embrace on themselves, that's going to proc something like Lifebind, and then you might be casting something like Spirit Bloom on yourself to do a lot of healing and Lifebind interaction and all those things. There is very little situations that I can think of where you would press Verdant Embrace on something other than yourself because it is dangerous. A lot of the times, you might be doing I don't know how many mythical skis or raid encounters. You might press Verdant Embrace on someone else, and then you're gonna stand in a swirly because of that, and then you're like, this is never worth casting on someone else, because one death due to Verdant Embrace is enough to put you off from this ability ever. So I'm not sure how this 4 set is gonna feel. I am kind of sad about losing the old 4 set. Let me know how you feel about this. I haven't really played my Preservation Evoker all that much lately, so I would love to hear opinions from someone who's maining Preservation Evoker. How do you feel about the tier set bonus? How do you feel about the changes? Oh, and I almost forgot, and it is relevant for Preservation Evoker. Augmentation Evoker is getting some substantial nerfs because your Ebon Might is no longer affects tanks or healers. So we'll have to see how the balance for Augmentation Evoker is going to turn out, specifically in that Mythic Plus content, because one of the reasons why Preservation Evoker might have a harder time getting invited in really high Mythic Plus content is to do with the fact that Augmentation Evoker is absolutely mandatory in really high-end Mythic Plus keys. Maybe not mandatory, but extremely relevant. So this nerf to Augmentation Evoker is actually good for Preservation Evoker's, how do you say, invite potential in high keys. So guys, let me know how you feel about this. Let me know how you feel about the initial changes. Let me know how you feel about the augmentation nerfs as a Preservation Evoker. Let's talk about Mistweaver Monk. There's quite a few changes here. I think they're actually very interesting. We're making several updates to Mistweaver focused on smoothing out their healing output on varying target sizes and shifting rotational damage priority to a more intuitive space when players should optimally use each offensive spell should be more obvious. And this is going to be relevant for most of the changes here. What they're trying to do is they're trying to increase the power of your spells when facing lower number of targets, which honestly is actually a big win in my opinion. We have a new talent in terms of Emperor's Favor. Shannon's gift healing is increased by 150% and its cast time is reduced by 100, but it now only heals a single ally. So basically you can change Shannon's gift to be a strong instant single target heal if you wish so. Dance of the Wind has been redesigned, now reduces physical damage taken by 10% and an additional 10% every 4 seconds until you receive a physical attack. Okay, and again, these are the big ones here now. Jade Empowerment has been redesigned, and you might be reading this and like, oh no, I love Jade Empowerment, what are you gonna do with this? Increases crackling Jade lightning damage by just 2000%. Nothing nothing big here. 2000% to its primary target and cleaves 4 additional enemies at 25% effectiveness. This change right here is aimed at the fact that you would be more willing to use Crackling Jade Lightning with Jade Empowerment in something like single target situations, because right now you're probably pressing your Thunder Focus T and then you're like, okay, there's a lot of trash mobs, I'm gonna press my Crackling Jade Lightning, is gonna do a shitloads of damage and a ton of healing. But if you use it on a single target, again, the damage is pretty good, but the healing is going to be something that you might not really think about. And Blizzard is trying to change that. They want you to look at single target bosses and they're like, okay, if you are spec'ing the Jade Empowerment, if you're proccing it, you could use Jade Empowerment on single target. And I think that is a huge win right now, because if you're playing your Mistweaver Monk right now with this talent, you're fully aware of the fact that when you're facing single target bosses, Jade Empowerment is somewhat limited, or if you're facing single target bosses that have adds, all of a sudden Jade Empowerment becomes something that you really want to play around. And they're trying to even that out. As long as they achieve a decent balance in terms of how much damage and healing it does on single target and how much damage and healing it does in AoE, as long as the balance is pretty good, I'm really happy about this. And in terms of other changes, Yulon Whisper healing is increased by 100%, Blackout Kick damage is increased by a whopping 75%, and it's going to tie in with the change here. Spinning Crane Kick damage is also increased by 30%, and Jade Fire Awakening now causes Blackout Kick to cleave 2 additional enemies at 20% effectiveness instead of 70% effectiveness. But hey, Blackout Kick damage has been increased, so under these circumstances, if you're facing 1 or 2 targets, your Blackout Kick is going to be more effective. This change overall is honestly really nice, because again, it's focusing on smaller groups. And in the same way, you'll see here, Invoker Chi, the Red Gray now causes 3 Gust of Mist per target, was 1, but only activates once per Blackout Kick and Rushing Wind Kick cast. Developer note here is teaching of the monastery Blackout Kicks will continue to function to activate additional gusts, but not from their cleave damage. Most of the changes here have been focused around the fact that they're trying to improve the effectiveness of Mistweaver when it comes to smaller or even facing less targets, and I think that's honestly pretty good as long as they get the balance right. And overall, I'm actually pretty happy about the Mistweaver changes overall, even though they might feel a little bit complicated at the start. I'm looking forward to try it out. I'm looking forward to try out Jade Empowerment a lot. I really want to see how it feels on that single target. I really do. Let me know how you feel about this, and we're gonna go and look at the tier set bonus for Mistweaver Monks when it comes to the, again, season 2. So the 2 set bonus is exactly the same for all the healers. The 4 set bonus, casting Renewing Mist applies insurance for 6 seconds. So casting Renewing Mist, you do that a lot as a Mistweaver. There's a lot of talents that help you get. We'll have to see if this also procs from Renewing Mist to get proc from certain talents and stuff like that. We'll have to see again, PTR when that's up. The healing of insurance is increased by up to 50% in proportion to the coverage Renewing Mist has on you and up to 10 allies. So this encourages to have more Renewing Mist out there. That's going to increase your insurance and all those things. Again, this is not all that different from the current gameplay of Mistweaver Monk. We'll have to see if this is going to change your talent build and things like that. Let me know how you feel about this 4 set bonus. Let me know how you feel about the changes for Mistweaver Monk. Overall, I'm relatively happy about what they're trying to do, and I think Mistweaver Monk dev is kind of cooking a lot of the times. Now let's talk about Holy Paladin in terms of specific changes. There's a new talent, Unbound Freedom. Blessing of Freedom increases movement speed with 30%, and you gain Blessing of Freedom when cast on a friendly target. So this is something that a lot of Holy Paladins would like to have currently for some of the end-tier bosses. Unending Light has been redesigned, now causes holy power spent on World of Glory to increase the healing of Light of Dawn, so these have been kind of reversed. Light's Conviction now additionally causes Holy Shock to refund half its mana cost when cast offensively. I think this is really nice because it gives you an incentive during the downtime. Hey, I'm gonna press Holy Shock offensively and it's not gonna cost a whole lot of mana. And I think that's actually really nice. I think it should have been there from the very start. Flashlight, and a lot of the changes here are to do with casting, and I know a lot of people are not gonna like this, but Flashlight mana cost reduced to 0.6 base mana, used to be 1.8. Flashlight healing decreased by 25%, but Infusion of Light increases the healing of Flashlight by 30%, used to reduce the mana cost. So there's no reason that Infusion of Light should reduce the mana cost, because the Flashlight has been, or Flashlight mana cost has been already reduced in terms of its base cost. So outside of that, Holy Light's healing is increased by a whopper 90%. And Infusion of Light now increases the healing of Holy Light by 30% instead of 100%. Outside of that, Inflorescence of the Sunwell now increases Infusion of Light's healing increase to Flash of Light by additional 15%. And Inflorescence Sunwell now increases the healing of Holy Light by an additional 15% instead of 50%. And the developers notice that Flashlight and Holy Light have a lot of power tied into talents, modifying their effectiveness, and we would like these spells to be more effective to cast without these talents, and casting these spells without Infusion of Light active to be more viable. So this is basically what they're trying to achieve. They want you, or possibly be able to cast these spells without Infusion of Light, and they don't want a whole lot of power being tied into specific talents, so you don't feel like you need to pick them, or you feel like these abilities are only viable when you pick those talents. As long as the balance is fine and you don't feel like you're obliged to do a lot of hard casting, because I know a lot of Holy Paladins don't like that gameplay, let me know which type of, or on which side of the fence you're sitting as a Holy Paladin in terms of caster, in terms of less casting and things like that. I'm really interested in that. It's also worth noting that Holy Light still costs a lot of mana and it has a relatively long cast time, and my personal opinion in terms of Holy Paladin gameplay, the less hard casting the better, but that is honestly my personal opinion. Let me know yours. And now let's talk about Lightsmith nerfs that are happening to Holy Paladins. So Hammer and Anvil healing decreased by 20%, Blessed Assurance now increases the damage of Crusader Strike by 20%, used to be 180. So these nerfs are going to limit or reduce the effectiveness of Lightsmith. I don't think it's fully dead from what I've seen so far, because some of the changes that I've seen, again, the loss of tier set bonuses and things like that, are going to impact Herald as well. So I don't think Lightsmith AC is completely dead or unviable. We'll have to see if there's going to be further tuning out there, but this is definitely going to limit that. And I can also see that a lot of people might be looking at, hey, the meta build right now for Lightsmith has been nerfed, and the other changes are not really doing a whole lot to fix those nerfs or improve the gameplay, in my opinion. And this is why I think a lot of Holy Paladins are really scared about the future of Holy in Season 2, because the changes right now are not, again, there needs to be more, and I'm 100% there is going to be more. It should be noted that the loss of the current Holy Paladin tier set is going to impact different builds very differently, and that is going to be an important factor depending on which playstyle you enjoy. One of the biggest issues with Holy Paladin is Holy Shock. The effectiveness of Holy Shock. I am 100% certain that in the next week or two or whatever, before the Season 2 comes out, Holy Shock is going to be buffed. because the loss of the tier set and basically the value of Holy Shock is something they need to improve. In terms of the 4-set bonus, Divine Toll applies insurance to all or to allies. It heals for 8 seconds. Divine Toll's cooldown is reduced by 1 second each time you spend Holy Power. Now, we don't know if that 1 second is tied into one Holy Power or if it's tied into Holy Power spender. We'll have to see, but again, I think most people are going to be very scared about losing their old tier set bonus and getting this new tier set bonus, which is, again, the cooldown reduction to Divine Toll can be pretty nice, but it's also depending on the damage patterns. So let me know how you feel about the overall changes to Holy Paladin. Let me know about the buffs to caster kind of playstyle. How do you feel about that? And how do you feel about the nerfs to Lightsmith AC build? Because are you a fan? Are you someone who's going to be really sad about this? So let's go and talk about Discipline Priest. And again, the changes for Disc and Holy are significant, and some of them I prefer more than others, and I'll talk about them in the end of the video. But overall, I might not cover everything here because I want this section to be shorter, otherwise the video is going to be 10 hours long. But the goal of these changes is to reduce the number of cooldowns Discipline has access to and bake some of that power into other abilities, and to some extent simplifying it a little bit more. In addition, we're resolving some pain points in the talent tree and making it easier to quickly get atonements on allies by moving Overloaded with Light. There's actually a lot of emphasis on Ultimate Penitence, and I can see why, because they want the talent to be more used. Overloaded with Light into a more central location. Finally, we're re-teaming Purge of the Wicked into a shadow spell so that Twilight Equilibrium can be more consistently activated. I'm not a huge fan of Twilight Equilibrium by itself, but let me know how you feel about that. So there's new talents. Divine Procession. Smite extends the duration of an active atonement by 3 seconds. This used to be a tier set back in Dragonflight. New talent, Inner Focus, Flash Shield, Power Word Shield, Penance, Power Word Radiance, and Power Word Life have a 20% increased chance to critically heal. Purge the Wicked is renamed to Encroaching Shadows and has been updated. Now causes Shadow World Pain to spread instead of overriding Shadow World Pain with a new spell. Evangelism, and we'll talk about the talent tree here. The talent tree has changed a little bit. Evangelism now heals all targets affected by atonement for 4,200 spell power split amongst targets healed. Now this effect has been applied to multiple cooldowns for other healers as well. And again, we talked about the fact that Blizzard wants, when you press a cooldown, to feel its oomph instantly, and then the cooldown do whatever it is doing. Evangelism continues to extend atonement by 6 seconds, and its visual has been updated. Contrition has been made baseline and now logs as a penance healing. Penance healing now triggers Divine Aegis. Power Word Shield absorption increased by 15%. Okay. Power Word Radiance healing radius increased to 40 yards. Absolutely massive quality of life improvement, especially because I'm doing a lot of Mythic Riskies as a Discipline Priest right now, and there's sometimes a hunter miles away. They don't get atonement. I'm doing my pet ramp and all that, and then I have to apply atonement for them manually. It's just annoying. So I think this is a massive quality of life. Really love this. Luminous Barrier healing is increased by 20%. Indemnity increases the duration of atonements applied by Power Word Shield by 4 seconds instead of 3 seconds. And then we'll talk about Ultimate Penitence now shields the priest for 100% of the health, so making it a little bit safer to use. There is a lot of emphasis on Ultimate Penitence. I've seen this throughout a lot of other healers as well. They're trying to make cooldowns that people don't pick to feel more rewarding, and I think that's all great. Now these are the big changes here. These are the big changes that we don't want to focus on. Smite damage has been increased by 25%. Shadow War Pain damage increased by 25%. And you're looking at this and you're like, okay, my Discipline Priest is just gonna be a lot better right now because Smite and Shadow War Pain is something that consistently is going to help me in terms of atonement, healing, and everything. This is all great. And you can see here, Shadow War Pain should be an important part of Discipline's healing on atonement targets to provide a steady stream of healing over time. I agree with this. Its damage has been weaker than we would like, especially compared to other spells in the kit like Entropic Rift. Agree with this. A lot of, again, you're basically running with Void Weaver as a Discipline Priest. No questions asked. So Blizzard is trying to approach that as well. We're bringing it up and reducing Entropic Rift's damage. And you can see here, where is it? Entropic Rift's damage has been reduced by 20%. So you can see their mentality here. This has a side effect of boosting Oracle's damage compared to Void Weaver. Just remember this, and we're going to talk about other things. Pain and Suffering increases the damage of Shadow World Pain by 15 and 30 instead of 7 and 15. So this is a pretty sizable buff. And you also have to look at the Void Summoner changes because these are absolutely huge. Because Void Summoner now only triggers from Mind Blast and Penance cast. It does not have Smite in it, which means that for the people who really enjoyed optimizing your Smites cast in order to get CDO, in order to get your pet faster, that kind of gameplay is going to be reduced. In my opinion, for example, they're increasing Shadow World Pain damage by 25%. They're also reducing Entropic Rift damage. And again, you could say that they're trying to remove the reliance of Void Weaver for Discipline Priest. I don't know if that's going to work or not. They're increasing smite damage, but they're removing smite from Void Summoner CDO rotation, which is going to ruffle a lot of feathers. You could argue that the question here is continuous throughput versus cooldown reliance. Which kind of gameplay do you prefer? Ultimate Penitence swap position, we'll talk about the talent tree, and then the big change here is Rapture is removed, which is crazy in my opinion. And then Train of Thought has also been removed, and Train of Thought also provided you with CDR because you could reduce the cooldown of your penance, and therefore reducing your penance, using your penance more often. It works well with Void Summoner, blah 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 blah. Cooldown reduction for Discipline Priest is going to have less effect. Second of all, you don't have cooldowns like Rapture anymore. Let me know how you feel about this. I like my CDR gameplay. I like optimizing, you know, your smite cast and all those things. There's still a lot of time. We'll have to see how the continuous healing is going to look like because of the buffs to smite, because of the buffs to Shadow Word Pain. We'll have to see if the loss of the CDR or the weakened CDR effect that you have right now is going to be crazy impactful. We'll basically have to test it out, but please keep this in mind. When I'm looking at Discipline Priest changes here, I'm mainly looking at Mythic Plus because that's basically what I spend most of my time is Discipline Priest. I haven't played this in raid for a very long time, so I would love to know opinions of Discipline Priest mains in raiding content and how they feel about the changes listed here. In terms of Oracle, new talent, Twin Side, in terms of 3 additional penance bolts are fired at an enemy within 40 yards when healing an ally with penance, or fired at an ally within 40 yards when damaging an enemy with penance. And Premonition now has 2 charges baseline, and then Divine Providence has been removed. Again, they're trying to make Oracle a bit more appealing because they had a big issue with Oracle being basically unusable for Discipline Priest. Overall, let me know how I feel about this. We talked about the Entropic Rift damage being reduced as well. This all ties into the fact that they're trying to give more power to your base or your bread and butter abilities. In terms of the tier set, I'm not exactly sure how to feel about the tier set right now. I do need to have more testing, but the 4-set bonus when your power shield is completely absorbed on an ally, you have to remember, you're not able to apply shields to Rapture because Rapture is no longer there. So when it's completely absorbed on an ally, they are granted insurance at 40% effectiveness. Allies with your insurance or absorption effects receive 15% increased healing from you. I'm assuming this also works with Atonement Transfer, but we'll have to test. In terms of the actual talent tree, you can see here, you can see Ultimate Penitence has been moved. You can see Overloaded with Light is right here. You can pick up Wheel and Woe multiple different ways right now. And then you can also see that Rapture is no longer here and it's been replaced with Evangelism in this spot. And now let's talk about Holy Priest changes. And honestly, out of most of the healers that I've seen so far, I'm probably vibing with Holy Priest changes the most. And we'll talk about it at the end of the video. But developers notes, we're aiming to provide a better experience when using Divine Hymn while pulling back on the number of raid cooldowns available to the specialization. They removed Holy War Salvation. It's just a little kind of sneak peek right now. Holy War Salvation is no longer there, and I kind of been thinking about this for a long time, whether that's a good or a bad thing. Again, Holy War Salvation is something that you really use in raid situations, but sometimes it can feel really bad when you can't squeeze in multiple of them. So let me know how you feel about this as well. We're also doing some consolidation in the tree by removing Circle of Healing. And we'll talk about Circle of Healing and Prayer of Healing changes because those are the most impactful. Remove Circle of Healing and adding more interaction with Prayer of Healing. Thank God. Prayer of Healing is definitely looking to be a lot more viable. Finally, we're looking to provide options for gameplay styles centered around Renew Uptime. Again, another type of gameplay with Renew. I'm all for this, man. I'm all for it. Like in terms of the developer note, everything's hitting. So several talents have been changed. New position, new talent, lasting words, Holy Word Serenity applies at 12 seconds of renew to its target, and Holy Word Sanctify applies 4 seconds of renew to its allies it heals. This is a Dragonfly tier set making a comeback. I'm all for this. New talent, Light in the Darkness, increases the healing done by Holy Word Serenity and Holy Word Sanctify by 20 to 40%, increases the radius of Holy Word Sanctify by 15 to 30%. Okay. New talent, Dispersing Light, 6% of healing done with Heal, Flash Heal, and Power Word Life is replicated to 4 injured allies within 40 yards. Again, 6% doesn't seem all that significant. We'll have to see how it's going to synchronize with other talents. New talent, Divinity, your healing is increased by 10% while Apotheosis is active. There's multiple talents here that interact with Apotheosis, and your tier set interacts with Apotheosis. So there's a lot of synergy here. We'll have to talk about this. So your healing is increased by 10% while Apotheosis is active. When you activate Apotheosis, your next tree heals or Prayer of Healing casts are instant and heal for 25% more. So you can see how Blizzard is trying to include Prayer of Healing in a lot of your talents, and you'll see this throughout the Holy Priest section. New talent, Eternal Sanctity. Your Holy Word spells extend the duration of Apotheosis by 1.5 seconds. Again, extra emphasis on Apotheosis. There's multiple talents to interact with Apotheosis. Your tier set bonus or 4 set bonus interacts with Apotheosis as well. New talent, Holy Celerity, reduces the cooldown of your Holy Words by 15 seconds. Another talent that we'll talk about the tier set bonus. This is gonna make a whole lot of sense when you look at the tier set bonus as well. New talent, Empowered Renew. Renew reduces the cooldown of Sanctify by additional 6 seconds and heals for 60% more when cast, but has a 12-second cooldown. Blizzard has talked about Renew becoming a bigger part, or possibly Renew build emerging. Voice of Harmony has been updated. Power of Life now also reduces the cooldown of Holy Word Serenity. Divine Star and Halo now reduces the cooldown of Holy Word Sanctify. We'll have to see what the cooldown reduction is looking like. We'll have to see how Halo from Archon interacts with this as well. Again, multiple things that you can try out on PTR builds. Seraph, I'm not even sure if I'm saying this right. Crescendo has been redesigned and moved from PvP talent. I didn't even know what this talent was until I saw that it's a PvP talent, into a Holy Tree. Now reduces the cooldown of Divine Hymn by 60 seconds. Choice node against Gale of Song, and Gale of Song has been changed as well. Again, more emphasis on Divine Hymn. Blizzard has talked about that already. Gale of Song has been redesigned while channeling Divine Hymn. Places 2 stacks of prayer, mending up to 3 allies within its range every 1 second. And Prayerful Litany has been redesigned, now causes the primary target of Prayer of Healing to be healed for 75% more. A huge wall of text in terms of reading the new talents, in terms of being or adding new choice nodes, in terms of adding extra emphasis to Divine Hymn. You have to remember, again, if you go to the bottom, Holy Word Salvation has been removed, so keep that in mind. I said this at the start of the video as well. Outside of this, all healing is reduced by 8%. Now keep in mind, balancing is probably going to be all over the place here. So they're reducing your healing by 8%, but they're also removing your Holy Word Salvation. So how is this going to work out in something like raid environment? What is the healing going to look like? Don't look at the numbers, look at the design philosophy in terms of how they want the class to feel like, because this is going to be really, really important. Holy Mending Healing has been increased by 30%. So if you look at the Holy Priest tree in terms of the talents, how they've been shuffled and changed, Holy Mending is no longer a choice node with Benediction. It's sitting here, and when Prayer of Mending jumps to a target affected by a Renew, the target is instantly healed. So this has another synergy with possibly a Renew build. Prayer of Healing increased by a whopping 40%. Okay, so this is where they're trying to make Prayer of Healing more usable. They're also, how do they say, included Prayer of Healing in a lot of your talents. Prayer of Healing mana cost has been increased by 25%. Prayer of Healing cast time is now 2.5 seconds instead of 2 seconds. Outside of that, Prayer Circle now triggers from Holy Word Sanctify. Makes a whole lot of sense because Circle of Healing is no longer there. It's removed. And it also makes sense because you look at the new talent build here and you see Prayer Circle, Holy Word Sanctify reduces the cast time and cost of your Prayer of Healing by 20% for 8 seconds. That's fine, because if we still had Circle of Healing and then Prayer of Healing, it becomes a lot more viable. You could say that there is a bloat of AoE healing abilities for Holy Priest, because when they were viable, that's what people were saying when they were playing Holy Priest, is that you had a bunch of these healing abilities that did something similar. So what Blizzard is doing, they're removing Circle of Healing and they're kind of baking in a lot of the talents and interactions into your other already existing abilities. And I think that's actually really nice. Without creating a bloat, you're making certain other talents, aka Prayer of Healing, a lot more viable or usable without creating too many buttons to press. And that's one of the reasons why I'm actually excited about it. Cosmic Ripple healing increased by 150%. Light Wells healing threshold is now 75%, which I think is really nice. Resonant Reward now also affects Power of Life. They're trying to make Power of Life, again, you'll see this a lot. They're trying to make it a lot more usable. And this is probably the most exciting, or maybe not the most exciting, but something that I'm really kind of looking forward to test out. Lightweaver can now also be consumed by Prayer of Healing in addition to heal. So right now, if you're playing Lightweaver, you're pressing a single target heal into a single target heal. You don't have any options. In the future, you'll be pressing a single target heal, and then you'll decide, do I press my AoE heal or do I press my single target heal? And I think that's so much better. Lightweaver now accumulates up to 4 charges instead of 2. So if you look at the talent tree right now, if you go to Lightweaver, Flash Heal reduces the cast time of your next heal, or Prayer of Healing within 20 seconds by 30% and increases its healing by 25 and can accumulate up to 4 charges. I think this is a fantastic change. that gives you different flavor, different decision making depending on the situation you're in. Again, a big W. A lot of these changes are big W in my opinion. Divine Hymn now channel's duration is now 5 seconds instead of 8 seconds. Again, the same kind of thing happened to Tranquility for Resto Druids. And those other changes, Afterlife no longer grants resurrection cast during Spirit of Redemption. And you might be like, okay, I don't like this. I want Afterlife to do that, because if you're someone who's been progressing raid as a holy priest, you're probably fully aware of this. When you go into spirit form, you're able to basically res someone. And that's pretty nice, especially during mythic progression and things like that. And if you're a holy priest who's not aware of this, please be aware of this, because there's so many holy priests who have no idea how Afterlife works. I don't think this is the end of the world, because you'll see later on, can you see it here? Restitution is now a choice node against Guardian Angel. So if you go to the holy priest talent build, so you have a choice between Guardian Angel or Restitution. Restitution is after Spirit of Redemption expires, you will revive at up to 100% health. So I'm not sure how competitive this is going to be, whether it's going to be usable or whatever, but it's definitely, Restitution has been moved up in the tree, and it is easier to pick up, or at least depending how Guardian Angel talent is going to work out in the future. We look at Holy Nova now, reduces the cooldown of chances by 4 seconds baseline and no longer interacts with the Voice of Harmony. Crisis Management now also increases the critical strike chance of Power Word Life. We saw a bunch of Power Word Life additions in here. They really want Power Word Life to be a lot more used. Trail of Light healing replication is now 35%, used to be 25%, so above the Trail of Light. Apotheosis nerf in terms of now reduces the cooldown of holy words by 200% instead of 300%, but honestly there is a lot of emphasis on Apotheosis. There's a couple of new talents to do with Apotheosis. There's talents to reduce the cooldown on holy words, and there's a tier set. We'll talk about that very soon. Prismatic Echoes now also increases the healing of Renew by 15 or 30%. You'll see this a lot for other healers as well, where talents also get an additional effect baked into them to make it more appealing. Prismatic Echoes increases the healing of Mastery Echo of Light by 5 or 10%, so this is actually a nerf because it used to be 6 to 12%, but you also have an additional effect to this talent. Resonant Word is now on a personal, this doesn't really matter. Benediction is no longer a choice node, Lightwell is no longer a choice node, Divine Word is no longer a choice node. They changed up a lot of your talents. And you can see here, these are the talents that are now 1 point, which I think are really cool. Then there's also talents that have been removed, and there's a lot of talents that have been removed. This is a rework for Holy Priest, and again, we talked about Holy World Salvation being removed. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about the loss of this big cooldown, primarily used in raid content? And in terms of Oracle, new talent, Twin Sight, and we saw something similar to this in the, again, this one priest section. It's a little bit different here. An additional 2 stacks of Prayer of Mending is placed on a second ally within 40 yards when casting Prayer of Mending. And lastly, let's talk about the tier set bonus for Holy Priest. So Holy Word Serenity and Holy Word Sanctify apply insurance for 10 seconds to one target while Apotheosis is active. So your window during Apotheosis is going to be extremely important, and there's multiple different talents to work with that. Your healing is increased by 1% for each insurance active on allies. So your window during Apotheosis is important. There's a bunch of talents that work with Apotheosis. For example, your Holy Word spells extend the duration of Apotheosis by 1.5 seconds. There's talents that reduce the cooldown of Holy Word spells. There is, again, we're not looking at the tuning, we're not looking at the numbers here, we're looking at the intention in terms of what the gameplay might look like. And there is a lot of emphasis in terms of how you optimize your cooldowns, how you optimize your holy words and things like that. Honestly, let me know how you feel about Holy Priest. Overall, I think the changes for this, I'm actually relatively excited. I think out of all the healers that I've seen so far, Holy Priest changes might actually be in the top end for me in terms of, or the possibility of gameplay. Don't look at the numbers, look at the intention. Let's move on to the next healer. And lastly, let's talk about my boy Restoration Shaman, and they received some changes. I don't think they received the most. There's a couple of specs out there who just got full-blown reworks in my opinion, but some of the big changes, Ancestral Guidance has been removed. This is probably the biggest change that happened to Shamans in my honest opinion, because the developers note here we have a couple of goals we're trying to address with this change. One is to reduce the overlap between Ascendance and Ancestral Guidance for Restoration Shamans. They both serve a similar purpose and are often combined together. Yes, this is absolutely true in raid environments, especially given the fact that most Shamans are going to pick a 2-minute Ascendance, and that lines up with Ancestral Guidance in a really nice way. In Mythic Plus, you don't have to combine them together. You can use them separately depending on the damage patterns that are going out. Secondly, we like to bolster enhancement and elementals of healing utility from intentional global cooldown usage while pulling back on more passive ways to restore group health. So the removal of AG will possibly have impact on a talent build, especially considering certain talents to do with Ascendance. And again, let me know how you feel about this. Let me know about how you feel about the Blizzard's mentality in this. But let's talk about Restoration Shaman changes specifically. So development notes. Our updates to Restoration Shaman are focused on simplification, condensing keybind space, and adding support to Riptide focus builds. I actually agree with everything here because I do think Resto Shaman can sometimes feel a little bit bloated in terms of the buttons that it has, but I know by default, when Blizzard tries to simplify specs, most people will find that, hey, we're losing this, we're losing that, Shaman is getting worse and things like that. So it's very hard to achieve this without making everyone angry. And let's look at some talents. So new talent, Mana Tide. Healing Tide Totem now additionally grants 80% increased mana regeneration to allies. So basically what they're doing, they're baking in Mana Tide Totem into Healing Tide Totem. And the talents you can see here, these are the Resto Shaman talents right now. And you'll see Mana Tide is going to be in the same location, but it's not going to be a separate button. So how does that gonna work with, again, a lot of people might be picking Mana Tide as totemic, and if you press Mana Tide, that's also gonna shoot out chain heals because of talents like Lively Totems. I'm not sure if they're going to bring back that interaction because your Mana Tide is proccing from Healing Tide. You have new talents like Thursday's Resilience, which I think is a huge quality of life improvement. Earth Shield and Water Shield no longer lose charges and are 115% effective. And finally, I don't have to reapply my Earth Shields because you are playing double Earth Shields because of the most popular builds, and reapplying them can be so cringe. Using GCDs to do that, don't get me wrong. Moving around your Earth Shield, depending on the situation, depending if someone's taking consistent single target healing and you want that additional healing increase that Earth Shield provides, it is important. It can be situationally or strategic, but reapplying Earth Shields by themselves because they ran out is just something that can be extremely annoying. And honestly, I think this talent is something that I've been waiting for a long time because it will simplify your gameplay, because you most likely will have to click Earth Shield and Water Shield less. So you might be looking at Terrazane's Resilience and asking yourself, how is this going to work with reactive warding, considering that they basically work against each other? You'll see the new talent build here for Resto Shamans. Terrazane's Resilience and Reactive Warding are a choice node. You get to pick one or the other, and I know which one I'm picking, at least based on quality of life. Another new talent, Whispering Waves. 10% of Healing Waves healing is duplicated onto each of your targets with Riptide. So this kind of ties into the Riptide kind of gameplay. You want to have as many Riptides as possible if you end up picking this talent. Where is this talent going to sit? It replaces Primordial Wave. RIP Primordial Wave. It's no longer there. It's replaced by Whispering Waves, and I'm pretty sure no one is sad about this. I know so many Resto Shamans, just they despise Primordial Wave. They don't like the gameplay. They don't want to pick it. I can see the value of Primordial Wave depending on which build you're running and things like that, but I can also see the other side of Resto Shamans who just don't like this at all. So let me know how you feel about Whispering Waves. Let me know about, are you sad about the fact that Primordial Wave is finally gone? I know a lot of people were asking for something like this. Outside of this, Healing Wave is now learned at level 11, so hopefully you're going to get a talent point out of this because you will need it. I'll talk about this later on. Wave Speaker's Blessing now additionally increases the periodic healing of Riptide by 10 to 20%. So you can see here, Wave Speaker's Blessing here, it has an additional effect. This is prevalent for all the healers out there. Blizzard has added additional effects to talents that people might not be inclined into picking. So I think that's a good change. We'll have to see about the tuning and all those things. Outside of that, Spirit Walker's Tidal Totem now triggers after casting Healing Tide Totem. That makes sense because Mana Tide Totem is no longer there and it's kind of baked into the Healing Tide if you do end up picking up the talent. Downpour now overrides Healing Rain for 8 seconds, used to be 6 seconds. Basically, what this comes down to is that after using your Healing Rain or after using a Surging Totem, you're going to have a longer time where you can press your Downpour. And I think this is nice. For example, for a Totemic, this is going to last for 22 seconds instead of 12. So when you press your Surging Totem, you're like, okay, there's nothing really happening. I don't want to press my Downpour right now. You'll have a bigger window. Quality of life, nothing too crazy, but it is quality of life at the end of the day. And then we also seen another change right here, and that is kind of annoying in my opinion, because Ancestral Vigor is now a 2-point talent. So you actually get the same effect, but you need to invest 2 points instead of 1, which is kind of annoying because there is quite a few talents that are being added. I want to experiment with my builds. Ancestral Vigor is something that can be very potent during your progression, both in raid and Mythic Plus, depending on the type of content you're doing. So it just gives you less kind of experimentation. So the Summary of Resto Shaman simplification that Blizzard tried to achieve, you don't have AG anymore, you don't have Primordial Wave anymore, you don't have to reapply Earth Shield if you spec into the new talent in terms of Terrazane's Resilience. a lot of your talents in terms of Mana Tide or Mana Tide Totem is gone and baked into Healing Tide, so there are less buttons to possibly press. But I'm not sure how this is going to work out in terms of the tuning, in terms of the healing the Resto Shaman can provide. So let's go and talk about the 4-set bonus the Resto Shamans are getting in Season 2. And again, the 2-set bonus is always the same. The 4-set bonus when you cast Healing Rain. So this is a big talking point right now, and I have to talk about this. So if you're playing Totemic Resto Shaman, you're fully aware Surging Totem is your bread and butter. It is basically what your class or your spec revolves around. Now for Farseer Resto Shamans, I've seen a varying degree of Healing Rain priority. I've seen logs of high-performing Mythic Raiders and logs of Farseer Resto Shamans pushing high-end Mythic Plus content with a relatively low uptime on Healing Rain. So this tier set, straight away, when you cast Healing Rain, has issues for those people who are playing Farseer and they don't focus on Healing Rain. I genuinely believe Farseer Healing Rain needs additional tuning, or it needs to be looked at right now. So when you cast Healing Rain, one ally in your radius has insurance applied to them. I don't know how this works in terms of randomness. One ally, we'll have to see. When insurance is consumed, the next Chain Heal, Healing Surge, or Healing Wave is increased by 10%. Now, we're not looking at numbers. I don't want to look at numbers, but you can see the increase in Healing Wave. This could have possible synergy if you're looking at some of the new talents being added in terms of Whispering Waves. 10% of Healing Waves healing is duplicated onto each of your target's Riptide. Again, don't look at numbers, but look at the possible interaction synergy that Blizzard might look at further down the line. I'm also asking this. It says, when insurance is consumed, what does consumed mean? Because when you see here, your 2-set bonus, your healing spells have a chance to apply insurance, so the target that heals them over 15 seconds. Insurance is consumed if any ally drops below 40% health. Is that the only way to consume insurance? Or maybe if you reapply a new one, or maybe when it expires, does that count as consumed? Because imagine if you're fighting a boss or a dungeon or whatever, a situation where, let's say, there's a rot damage and no one is falling below 40% and you're never consuming it, and then therefore you're never getting this buff. I just need a little bit more clarification about how or when insurance is counted as consumed, and that's it. So the overall summary of the video, I think there's a lot of questionable changes here. I think this is not the end of the world because it's early. Blizzard is going to address, or hopefully will address, some of the issues, some of the changes they're making, and I don't think it's time to panic. I think it's important to provide feedback where the feedback is needed. I, for example, like the Holy Priest changes. I like the emphasis on Prayer of Healing. I like what they're doing with... I think Holy Priest changes are exciting. I think they're adding additional AoE abilities to your toolkit without creating a burden of too many keybinds. I think that's actually pretty interesting. Discipline Priest changes, I really want to know your opinion about this. The simplification, the removal of Rapture, the fact that your CDR has less impact. Again, some of the most fun times when playing Discipline Priest, at least for me, in Mythic Plus content, is when we're popping Bloodlust or Heroism and I'm just blasting my abilities and getting a huge uptime out of my pet. Absolutely incredible to play. Is that going to be possible in the next season? We'll have to see if there's going to be further changes and stuff like that. Really want to know your opinions about Discipline Priest. I do have to note that majority of my opinions when it comes to Discipline Priest are stemming from Mythic Plus content. I know, or I'm fully aware of the fact that Discipline Priest in raiding is a completely different beast, and when Blizzard is talking about simplification, it could be difficult to achieve that and have a fun spec, especially when Discipline Priest is so different or has a varying level of difficulty when it comes to Mythic Plus and raiding. Restoration Shaman changes in terms of removal of AG. Again, some of the simplification that they're trying to do, baking in a lot of abilities into Healing Tide Totem. I feel like they could add or focus a little bit more on Farseer in terms of trying to make it more popular, in terms of right now looking at the representation. Most of the Resto Shamans are totemic. I want more emphasis or more reasons to swap to Farseer right now, so that's something that I would like to see in the future, but let me know how you feel about this. Again, there are quality of life added to Resto Shamans. The 2-point Ancestral Vigor is not needed in my opinion, but it is what it is. The Resto Druid changes, I'm actually relatively excited because I really do like the Mastery rework. The fact that you're going to be punished less if someone is taking avoidable damage and you don't have a whole HOTS on them, and you can start healing a little bit more effectively because of how Mastery is being changed. I think that's really nice. I'm not 100% sold on the damage changes so far in terms of physical and magic, because if I opt in to play Kitty Weaving and I'm really trying my best, what is the damage going to be compared to playing the ranged Resto Druid DPS build? especially considering that Sunfire is such an easy way to apply a lot of damage. We'll have to see. Again, the fact that they're reworking or changing a lot of things for the class tree for the 75th time, I hope they're gonna get this right. I want to try it out in PTR. Holy Paladin changes. I think Holy Paladin changes are probably the least liked by the community, including myself. I know they are nerfing Lightsmith AC build, and I think a lot of people might be like, oh hey, finally. But I also don't think they're compensating for those nerfs, or at least they're compensating with caster changes, which I think a lot of people are not gonna like, but I know there is a community of Holy Paladins who like casting, so let me know. I also think the loss of Holy Paladin's tier set is going to be extremely annoying, considering that Holy Shock, people are already calling for Holy Shock buffs. I am 100% certain Blizzard is going to buff Holy Shock, because if they're not, I don't know what to tell you. And in terms of Mistweaver changes, honestly, there's quite a few changes that I really like. Honestly, the fact that they're trying to improve the effectiveness of your abilities when facing smaller number of mobs is a win-win situation in my opinion. And again, as long as the tuning is correct, as long as the playstyle doesn't change too much, because I actually think Mistweaver is pretty much perfect. It's arguably, in my eyes, one of the most fun healers to play. So I don't want a lot of changes for Mistweaver, but the changes that I've seen so far have been pretty good, so I'm relatively excited. And in terms of Preservation of Evoker changes, there isn't a whole lot outside of trying to make Flame Shaper work better in Meta Plus content, which on paper sounds really good, because I do think that hero builds should be as equal as possible, or try to create an equal footing, so you can try out different hero builds, you can try out different playstyles, you can almost create a new class or spec. I guess a lot of evokers will also enjoy the fact that you will always have a guaranteed dream breath on yourself, depending on which build you're running, depending which content you are doing. But I'll be honest with you, my Preservation Evoker is relatively parked. I do that weekly key. Again, I had a decent time playing Preservation Evoker. I did play Preservation Evoker and Flame Shaper in Raid, but I haven't looked up all the latest information about them. I'm not sure how the Flame Shaper changes are going to truly impact their performance in Mythic Plus, or how it's going to impact their performance in raiding as well. Because I did play Flame Shaper in Raid initially because it was so busted with Engulf. So let me know how you feel about Preservation Evoker changes. I think probably the more important change that might make Preservation Evoker a lot more optimal, or get you that invite for high Mythic Plus keys, is going to be the fact that Augmentation Evoker is getting some substantial nerfs, but tuning is still ongoing. Let me know which healer you're looking to main in the next season, which healer changes you enjoy the most, and which healer changes just have you asking, what the hell is Blizzard doing? Let me know. If you like this content, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.